Thanks for logging on to Wayne.com to go inside the zone. You may notice a different face to the left of me this season. Tom Davis, after a couple years, no longer here. We're talking with Justin Kinney this season. Excited to talk to you. You're a Northside grad.
I am.
You know the SAC back and forward. I know that from your days. And then you've been covering high school sports in the News Sentinel for how long now?
I've been since 2001.
2001. So you've got quite a bit of experience. We were going to have the pig step in, but we decided to keep the show kosher, which is probably the best way to go.
Best thing, you know, with FCC rules and regulations, I don't know if that's the right guy to have on.
Absolutely. You cannot have swine on the air. First question, as we dive into these conferences, we're going to talk SAC first. And what we're going to do is, I guess it's not a question, we're going to talk about the top three teams. We'll each pick our top three teams from each local conference, each of the four conferences locally, and then go through who we think is going to do well this season and who is going to be a surprise team perhaps to watch in each conference. And naturally, we'll start with the SAC. Justin, who do you have winning the SAC this year in 2014?
I got Snyder up top.
Interesting.
A lot of guys coming back. Everybody wants to talk about the teams that lost guys from last year up at the top of the SAC. Snyder brings a lot back, starting with Colton Painter at quarterback. 2 running backs, DeAndre Billingsley. Eric Cirillo was out for the year last year with an ACL tear. He's back. 3 senior linemen back. The 2 additional linemen that'll start are seniors. And Coach Russ Isaacs, enjoying his retirement enough that he's going to come back. He's assistant Coach Lance Klein along the offensive line for Snyder. So that's a huge addition. And I just like Snyder brings more talent, more starters back than anybody else in the SAC.
That's who I have picked as well to win the SAC. I kind of had to struggle between Snyder and Dwenger because you know those are programs each year that are going to bring not only a number of talented players, but the depth is a real concern in the SAC when you can get beat up every week. As far as Snyder goes, you mentioned Colton Painter. What do you think he's going to be doing better as a quarterback this season? Because you think of Snyder, you don't necessarily think high-scoring offense, quarterback. You think grinding the ball, offensive and defensive linemen, and stellar defense, at least when I think of Snyder. What are they going to do better offensively in your eyes?
You know, I think Colton Painter is just going to take that natural progression as a quarterback. Instead of being more of a game manager last year, maybe not making mistakes, they're going to put the ball in his hand, let him sling it around a little bit more. Malik Bramley is a junior wide receiver at 6'3". He's going to be a phenomenal wide receiver. And then Devlin Williams, who plays basketball, back on the football team for the first time as a freshman. He's a tall, rangy guy. Russell Davies is back as a tight end. He's going to have a lot of receiving options as well. I think it's going to be a more balanced offense than we saw last year at Snyder.
Who do you have finishing second in the SEC? Because as I mentioned, I was picking between Snyder and Dwenger for that top spot. I'll take the Saints. Who do you have?
I have the Saints as well, second.
Great minds.
Yes, you know, look at their defense. I like Dwenger's defense, bringing all 3 linebackers back, which is obviously huge. Cody Miller is going to take over the quarterback spot from Mike Fiacable. Capable guy, has seen some action there. Their defense held teams to less than 18 points a game last year, and I think they bring enough back defensively to be that. They're going to have a strong offensive line. Still have to identify some skill player guys offensively, but like you said before, Dwenger just kind of next guy up, and I think they're going to finish second in the conference this year.
I agree with a lot of that observation, especially the skill position players, because when you take a look back, I know that Coach Schwarzkopf gave us the numbers at the end of the year. You don't realize in the history of Bishop Dwenger football how good statistically Ryan Watercutter was as far as a pass catcher. He's first or second in like every receiving statistic. Mike Fiacable put up big numbers as a passer, and 1,300 yards from Cody Miller as a sophomore. It's funny because that experience 2 years ago, we're like, oh my gosh, Dwenger. They're going to be playing a sophomore quarterback with Fiacable hurt and another injury. They were at the third string guy. It's the silver lining this season if you're Cody Miller and you're that offense at Bishop Dwenger, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, he comes back with a lot of experience. He's not a first-year guy going in there like you mentioned, and he's going to have a solid offensive line in front of him. And the momentum they had from going to the state championship last year, yes, they lose a lot of guys, but a lot of people got enough experience along the offensive and defensive fronts. At the linebacker position, they got some guys coming back. I think they're going to be strong again.
All right. Now, as far as your third team, this is a little bit more of a wild card
to tough.
Me. I had trouble picking mine. I went with Wayne third.
Okay.
I just want to know where you went.
I went, no bias, I went Northside.
Okay.
3. I like what they added in terms of they have 3 transfers coming in, all are going to start. Arian Nieves from Dwenger is a sophomore. He's going to start at quarterback, replace Michael Levette. Jordan Kindig from Concordia He's going to come in and start, and then Randon Moore from Bishop Luers is going to start as well. Those are three guys that they're inserting into that lineup that are going to be difference makers, I think, for them. Arian Nieves as a sophomore, okay, he's going to have some growing pains. The one concern I have with Northside is we saw it last year with Michael Levette, just the ability to run around, extend plays. I mean, he was crazy at times, run around the pocket 5-10 seconds. That offensive line is still not going to be the greatest. Can Arian Nieves move around and extend plays the way Levette did last year? I think you're going to see a lot of hot reads, quick slants out of Nieves to get the ball out of his hand quickly, to kind of negate that lack of size and strength along the offensive front. And then Keyshawn Watson, a freshman running back from Northside, a guy to watch out for.
And I remember talking to Ryan Hall at practice just about a week ago. He was really high on Nieves back, a few years ago when C.J. Jackson, because of some injuries, was a starting sophomore, a left-handed kid. He got 3 years with him. That's exactly what Ryan Hall said. He's like, we've got 3 years with Nieves. By the time this guy's done, he's going to be a real player for us. We wondered how they were going to replace C.J. Jackson last year. Well, Michael Levette, all he did was pass for 2,000 yards, throw for 1,000 yards, but, in the offseason, moved to California. Are you a little bit concerned because they lose so many players in terms of skill guys and guys that put up big numbers? When you take a look at Nick Cook, I think he was probably maybe the most underrated player in the SAC last year. DeMarcus Moon you don't find Division I linebackers everywhere, but they do lose a good number of players. Latavius Guy would be another guy that were big contributors last year.
Sure, and guys even along the offensive front and defensive front. W.R. Sanders was huge for them along the defensive line. The thing with Northside, they're always going to have talent at the skill positions. It's if those guys can elevate and make plays. Their linebacker core returns intact without Moon. Sean Hill's back. Lionel Sorrells is back. Those guys are big play guys. So I think there is enough stepping up in the system to kind of negate the skill players. But the offensive and defensive fronts just worry me for Northside.
Now I picked the Wayne Generals to finish third, and let me
not a bad pick.
Well, and let me make my point, because I think if you take the top 6 players off any team in the SAC and say who's got the best 6, Wayne would have the best 6. So they've kind of got the cream of the crop.
For sure.
I think the question is the depth. I mean, once you get past the Powers twins and Austin Yarborough and Jock Thomas and Kai Black, all those guys that they've got that we know can do things on Friday night, maybe they've got the top 6, but do they have the depth down the road? And then Scott Shaw taking over a program. I know he's handed the keys to some of those guys are Ferraris. Austin Robertson being key among those at the 6'5" defensive end position. But what are the questions you have about Wayne going in, knowing that they do have some top end talent?
Oh, same ones you do. I would take their 11. And they're 22 overall, 11 on each side, and put up against anybody in the area. It's that next 22, 25, 30 guys, will they have the depth? Those guys are going to just get wore down, those starters going both ways, playing special teams. I just worry about late in games wearing down and stuff like that. Austin Robertson is a huge talent physically, but can he play the defensive end position at the high school level? We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
He has all the capabilities of doing it, and obviously the size and strength. But just can he do it? That's a question in my mind.
You're right. We haven't seen it. College coaches seem to love it, but it's different when you're doing 7-on-7 and camp drills and all that kind of stuff. He is impressive, though, as we saw when he had a touchdown catch against Dwenger last year. That was the biggest highlight of the season for me,
for sure,
to watch a guy like that move. Team to watch in the SAC. Who is your team to watch out of these, maybe besides these top 3-4 teams that we're talking about?
Obviously, I think it's Bishop Luers. They go winless last year in the regular season. They bring so much talent back. They talk about the culture change over there now. A lot of guys are focused. They have a smaller roster, in fact, than last year, about 75 guys, but I think it's 75 guys that are committed to the program as opposed to maybe 100 guys in which 25 of them are just there taking up space, kind of. But you look at their weapons, Noah Wazinski at quarterback, Austin Mack, Terrell Johnson in the slot. I like C.J. McCarter at running back. Solomon Smith out for at least the first half of the year with an ACL, but there's pieces there. And I think all eyes are going to be on that Week 1 game with Snyder just to see where Luers is at. They're not going to go winless, but are they going to have 2 wins? Are they going to have 4 wins? Are they going to have 7 wins? We don't know yet.
Yeah, I think Coach Lindsey, in talking to him at practice, he said, last year they had to replace 19 starters. This year they returned 19 starters. And, Austin Mack, some rate him as the best junior in the entire state of Indiana for 2016. Think about a high school receiver. You got to have somebody to get him the football. But last year with Noah Wazinski, you had Quinn Cook coming back as a state-winning quarterback as a senior. Smart guy, good leader. I think Coach Lindsey was in a little bit of a pickle. It's almost like he had too many quarterbacks, and you want to let the senior play because of the success he had and the respect that he has, but Wazinski has some talent as well, and I think getting just an overall sense of what they're going to be doing. Wazenski's a little more settled at quarterback and can kind of display his talent. But like you mentioned, they do have some areas of concern. And I think with me, that starts with the offensive and defensive lines, because the names we're talking about are not linemen. And you've got to win, especially when you're a 2A or a 3A school in the SAC. You've got to have guys on the line that are not going to get pushed around on Friday night. Other SAC teams that you think might be worth keeping an eye on?
I want to keep an eye on Concordia. They had 9 wins last year, but they lose David Morrison and some other big names on that team. I want to see how they bounce back. That program is out to prove it wasn't a one-year thing. They're an established program now in the SAC. We saw them struggle a couple years before that, before having the big year last year. Let's see if they can keep it up this year.
Southside, Northbrook, both adding new coaches. How do you think those roles will play out? Because Jason Dorfler is a guy, we know his coaching lineage. Especially you as a Northside guy.
For sure.
And also Roosevelt Northley. He's a guy who's been around the SAC his whole life, whether it's been as a head coach at Elmhurst or whether it's been as a player or as an assistant. Where do you see those programs heading?
I think both these programs are just in a foundation year. They want to lay the groundwork and foundation of a program, want to get bodies out, want to really get their styles installed. Both of these programs we've seen in the past succeed. South has plenty of athletes. Northrop has the biggest enrollment in Fort Wayne Community Schools. So there are athletes in the hallways there too. It's all a matter of getting kids engaged and getting out and playing football. And I think, in a year 2, year 3, we'll see them start moving up the standings. I think this year is kind of, let's lay the foundation and get guys out and kind of show them the way we want to run these programs.
All right, but you got Snyder winning the SAC, and I've got Snyder winning the SAC.
Yes. So they're both going to be right, both going to be wrong.
How close is it going to be at the top, though, between Snyder and those other schools, specifically Dwenger?
It's an interesting thing because Dwenger has a lot of unknowns, more unknowns than Snyder. I just look at Snyder and every position they're bringing a couple guys back that are key contributors for them. And that offensive line, we went through it, and so many of these programs have questions along the offensive line, and Snyder is going to put 5 seniors up front, 3 returning starters. I mean, I see that unit dominating week in, week out in the SAC.
They always seem to find 6'5", 240-pound guys wandering in the hallway. Kurt Tippmann does a great job, and those guys have been fantastic over the years. Let's